He's back. Johnny Gargano is back in WWE, making a surprise return last night on Monday Night Raw in Canada. And Johnny Gargano, the former NXT champion, the former NXT Triple Crown champion, the first ever NXT Triple Crown champion, is back in WWE, and he is back on Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, last night's edition of Raw was a jam-packed episode and featured a ton of major happenings and events. But Monday's WWE Raw saw the returns of the likes of Trish Stratus, the in-ring return of Edge. Now, prior to the start of Raw, however, both of those returns were announced and set in stone. There was another return that took place live in Toronto last night, and it was a very surprising one at that. And Be Yourself and No One Else rang out inside the arena in Toronto as Johnny Gargano made his way into a WWE ring for the first time in nearly 9 months. Now, of course, he's just the latest member of several WWE superstars to return to the company, those being former NXT superstars as well. Of course, over the last few weeks, with Triple H's rise to power in WWE, taking over as the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, taking over as the head of creative, we have seen the return of former NXT stars that had left the company, such as Hit Row, Dexter Lumis, Scarlett, Karrion Kross, Dakota Kai, all returned to WWE, and now Johnny Gargano is the latest name to return to the company. Now, Gargano, in his returning promo, said, quote, "First of all, thank you for reminding me who I am." He ran through his WWE resume to remind fans of who he is, bringing up his accomplishments in NXT. He also gave a slight nod to his and Ciampa's title victory against the Revival at NXT TakeOver Toronto back in the very same building back in 2016, saying, quote, "I won the NXT Tag Team Championships in this very building. It's good to see you again, Toronto." Now, Gargano's return also saw a short-lived reunion with a former partner of his, because, of course, Gargano stepped away from professional wrestling last December. The heart and soul of NXT opted not to re-sign with the company at the time so he could focus on being a father to his and his wife Candice LeRae's son, Quill. Now, Gargano was quiet about when he would even wrestle again. He said, quote, "There have been a lot of questions about where or when I would show up again. Honestly, I've had those same questions." Gargano's return promo was cut short, though, by his former stablemate in The Way and Mr. Money in the Bank himself, Theory. Now, instead of coming out to reminisce with Gargano, Theory gloated and boasted about his accomplishments in Gargano's face, saying, quote, "Everything you've dreamed of, I've already done." Now, this smack talk from Theory didn't come without repercussions, however, as Theory would be on the receiving end of a super kick from Gargano. Now, we have a bit of extra details about how this return came to be. As I mentioned, while it was a surprise last night, I would also say it's not totally a surprise, because once Triple H assumed power in WWE, once he became the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, once he became the head of creative, and once we started to see these names returning to the company, your Karrion Krosses, your Dakota Kais, your Dexter Lumises, Hit Rows, it just felt inevitable that the next person to come would be Johnny Gargano. We'd heard a report, we covered it here on the channel a couple of weeks ago. Shawn Michaels was tasked with reaching back out to Johnny Gargano and feeling out how he was feeling about a possible return to the company. Johnny Gargano's like everyone else that left NXT towards the end of last year. He didn't fit in the current mold and model of NXT 2.0. He was too old. He was so closely associated with the black and gold brand, and he was left with two choices. Either you re-sign with the company and you go to the main roster under Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis and Bruce Pritchard, and let's be honest, we all know how that was going to turn out, or you leave. He opted to leave. It came at a time which he wanted to take some time off anyway to start building that family. Of course, Candice LeRae was due to give birth to their child at the time, and he wanted to be there for the birth of their child, and he was, and help raise their child in that first year, because you can't get that time back. So credit to him for that. There were a ton of rumors about him possibly going to AEW, and the general feeling was that he would probably go to AEW. And make no mistake, if Vince McMahon was still the CEO, chairman, and head of creative in WWE, Johnny Gargano would not be in the company right now. He would be considering, okay, do I go to AEW or do I go somewhere else? Like, what do I do? Triple H is a game changer for a lot of talents. We've seen it. We've seen the names come to WWE and go onto the main roster. And Triple H try to right a lot of the wrongs that we have seen with these NXT stars over the course of the last couple of years. And we have seen that when it comes to Johnny Gargano. Now, as I mentioned, we have some more details regarding this return for the former NXT champion. Now, Gargano's name did not appear on any of the rundowns ahead of the show as to keep the appearance a secret. Now, that's no shock. They're not going to put Johnny Gargano's name on there because, frankly, the plans for Raw and SmackDown get leaked out hours before the show starts. I mean, previously, it was a bit more difficult because the show would change so much and Vince McMahon would rip up scripts. Now, Triple H doesn't tend to do that. The plans for Raw or SmackDown are generally locked in around 3 or 4 p.m. in the evening, possibly even earlier than that. So those plans still do get out. Those leaks still exist. By the way, it's a big company, but to avoid any spoilers, to avoid the news getting out, Gargano's name did not appear on any of the rundowns ahead of Monday Night Raw last night. Now, there was also much of the talent that were there that didn't know also. And much of the production was not briefed about him appearing. So only those that needed to know knew, essentially. That being Triple H, Gargano, I guess the producer of the segment, a handful of people maybe in production to make sure they had the Titantron and they had the graphics and the music and that ready. But people that didn't need to know, didn't know. And that's how you keep things a secret nowadays, because it was. No one saw this coming last night. I think in a general sense, people saw this coming. People expected, as I mentioned, Johnny Gargano to return to WWE now that Triple H was in charge. But in a general sense, I don't think people... for last night's sense, I don't think people thought that Gargano was going to return last night, and it certainly did surprise people. When Gargano walked through backstage a few minutes before he made his appearance, that's when most people found out. And again, that's nothing really new as well too, because if you watch any of the WWE 24 documentaries or WWE The Day Of documentaries, there are so many fantastic return moments that you see where you have this group of people in Gorilla that are, their match is next or their match has just happened or whatever, and then you have these people just walking and their jaw drops. They go, I remember a great one is when the Dudley Boys returned to WWE in 2015 in Brooklyn the night after SummerSlam, and I believe at the time it might be Becky Lynch is in Gorilla and a couple of other people because they've just had their segment, and you see the Dudley Boys walk in and they just go like that, and I'm sure it was probably like that with Johnny Gargano last night. Now, when it comes to the contact and when it comes to sealing this deal and making this deal happen, Fightful are reporting that WWE has maintained a continued interest in re-signing Johnny Gargano throughout his free agency period, and this does date back to when Vince McMahon was still in charge of the company and in charge of creative. Now, again, I think Gargano was probably very hesitant during that period because you have to remember too, it's not as if WWE let Gargano go when his contract expired last year. There were offers on the table. It's the same with Kyle O'Reilly. There were offers on the table, but at the time, people like Gargano, people like Kyle O'Reilly just said, well, I know where this is going. It was the same with Adam Cole. I know where this is going. I can and I could go to the main roster, but look at the creative. Look at those that have preceded me on the main roster that had huge success in NXT. Look what they were doing. Karrion Kross is now back with the company. He was wearing a gladiator mask and suspenders on the main roster. Why would I be any different? Adam Cole was pitched to cut his hair and be a manager for Keith Lee, who also got released. So if you're Johnny Gargano, if you were Kyle O'Reilly, if you were all of those guys that opted not to re-sign their contracts, why would they have stuck around at the time? Things have changed now. They've got a chance. The playing field is even. If anything, I wouldn't even say it's even. It's probably more leaning towards them because Triple H is in charge and Triple H is a fan and knows their work. So the communication was maintained throughout that entire period. And during that process, Fightful are reporting that the company was patient and respected Gargano's wishes and time off to be with his family. Now, Gargano was another name that WWE thought they had a significant higher chance of re-signing when Triple H gained power. As I mentioned, I think that previously, under the Vince McMahon regime, when Johnny Gargano was a free agent, the expectation was that the chances was that he was going to go to AEW at some point because that would be the better place for him to succeed when it comes to creative and getting opportunities, I believe. And while Vince McMahon might have wanted to re-sign him and I guess get him onto the main roster, Gargano, I think's hesitancy was fairly obvious in all of that. But as the report mentions, once Triple H assumes power, it really is a game changer. And make no mistake, I know a lot of those guys in AEW are locked into 4 or 5 year contracts, so they're not going anywhere. We're not going to see Adam Cole show up on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown anytime soon. Same with Malachi Black, same with Keith Lee, same with Isaiah Swerve Scott or Swerve Strickland, whatever you want to call him. We're not going to see them on WWE television. But if they were still free agents right now, they'd have some big decisions to make, and I think some decisions that they would probably go to WWE. I do look at names like Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland. I know they're the tag team champions right now, but they are also probably preferred to be single stars, and they would be in WWE right now. So they've got some big decisions to make in the future, but we'll wait and see when it comes to that. Once they become free agents again, that's going to be interesting. But again, that's not until 2026 or something like 2025. So it's a long, long way off. And look how much has changed in a few months, let alone 4 or 5 years. Now, it's also been reported, because there have been lots of discussions about, well, what offers did Johnny Gargano get when he was away from WWE? Were there offers from AEW? Were there offers from Impact Wrestling? Were there offers to go to Japan? Were there offers to do other things? You know, what happened with Gargano during that period? Now, Fightful are reporting that they haven't heard of any advanced negotiations between Gargano and All Elite Wrestling. They're also told that Impact Wrestling was never a serious consideration for Gargano. Despite that appearance he made on Impact a couple of weeks ago, he made an appearance via a video. He was praising Alex Shelley. It was almost a tribute video for Alex Shelley in the build-up to Shelley's Impact World Championship match against Josh Alexander at Impact Emergence. I spoke about it at the time, that it was a bit of a coup for Impact just to get him on there, but there was never really, I felt anywhere, serious consideration that he would go to Impact. I really did feel like the most likely destination for him was going to be AEW, again under Vince McMahon. But once Triple H became the head of creative and head of talent relations, it was over. Really, it really was. It was over. You know, you've got a guy that can make the contracts for Gargano, so he can give Gargano financially what he wants and the terms that he desires, and also he can give the creative that he desires. You know, it's Triple H really is in the most powerful position in WWE right now. I know people are going to talk about CEOs and chairwomen like Stephanie McMahon, but Triple H is controlling the narrative. He's controlling what you see on television, and not only is he making the deals with the talent, but he is in the position to promise creative to these talents. And I think that's a real important point here, is that when he's having these discussions about people returning, he can say, this is what I have mapped out for you. This is the vision creatively I have for you when you return to the company. And that's the real key thing. Yes, people care about money, dollars and cents, but they also care about what they're going to be doing on television. Are they going to be making an impact? And I think that really has changed things. And look, AEW is still a very interesting and promising company to go to if you're a talent. But at the same time, WWE is still the big leagues. It is the most watched television show, pro wrestling television shows on television right now. SmackDown's getting 2.3, 2.4 million viewers. You know, they're doing very well on Fox, on network television, not cable television, network television. You've got Monday Night Raw, which is bouncing back somewhat in the ratings as well, getting back to nearly 2 million viewers, 1.9 million viewers. And in comparison, you know, AEW, look, they're a startup company. They're light years behind WWE in terms of just brand recognition, but they're still a platform and they're still a decent show. But the pendulum has swung. Well, last year, you know, AEW had all this momentum, free agent signing, and they felt like there was somewhat of a shift. The shift has gone back to WWE at this point, and did it ever really move? Probably not, but Triple H getting into a position of power as a game changer, and you saw that with Johnny Gargano's return last night. Now, speaking of possibly going to AEW or that conversation, AEW sources, when asked, told Fightful they didn't believe Gargano was going to end up coming into the company throughout this year, though he did have several people in the company pushing for him, so I'm sure he had those that were in favor of him, saying you should sign him or he should come to the company, but of course, we know it didn't happen, and now he's back with WWE. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Gargano, obviously, he's going to be on Monday Night Raw, which is a good move for him. The one thing I would say is the crowd response initially was pretty rubbish. He came out and it was a bit flat. It was only really until his name appeared on the screen. It said Gargano that people went, oh, Johnny Gargano. Is Johnny Gargano coming back to WWE? Oh, it's Johnny Gargano. And that was a bit like, oh, that's a shame. But people do need to realize, and I know fans of the black and gold era of NXT maybe don't like to hear it, but it is true, like, not everyone that watches Raw and SmackDown watched NXT. They just didn't. They really, really didn't. And look at the numbers. The numbers prove it themselves. You know, NXT was on the network in its glory years, shall we say. So you had a handful of people watch it. I know they did the best numbers on the network, but the network also had, what, 1.3, 1.5, 1.7 million subscribers, something like that. So you're saying not every single person is going to watch it on there. So maybe, I don't even know if 1 million viewers watched it every single, but not a lot. Certainly not people that go to Raw and SmackDown every single week. So I guess that reaction's kind of expected somewhat. But now, like I said, he's on the big leagues. He's on Raw, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it pans out for Johnny Wrestling in WWE. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on Johnny Gargano's return in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.